Okay, let's start bending some shapes, shall we? Well, literally bending some text around shapes. Now there's 3 different methods you can use for this. You might combine them as I'm going to do here, or you might just be able to use one method on its own. But they're all equally simple, and I'm using the 3 different methods because a situation might arise where one method won't work for you. So we've got 3 simple methods. We're in Affinity Photo on the iPad, so you don't need Designer or Publisher, just Affinity Photo. It works equally well on the desktop too, I might add. So let's start a new document. Now for this exercise, it can be anything as simple as a print document. This is A4 size. Let's make it, orientation, portrait. Why not? Do we want a transparent background? Well, it's handy sometimes, but in this case, no. Okay. And there we go. Now I'll pinch it in. And you can just see I've just pinched it in a little bit. And I'll move the whole thing. Whoops. Back there, move the view tool. I can move it over there. I like to have it off to one side because when you do that with the menus, on this side, the toolbars, they pop out there and can sometimes cover your work. Now that's an A4 page, remember, so what we're going to do here is work on an A4 page, but I'm on an iPad Mini 6, so we've got a very small picture to start with. Now what I want to do here is start with the word whiskey. We're going to do a whiskey label for want of a better thing to do. So let's see where we start. So here we are at the next step, or ready for the next step. We've got our canvas set up, and now I want to put just one word in there, and we'll use artistic text for this. Artistic text tool, we'll start about here. 185 point, I think I'll go 108, might be better. There we go. Now, capital letters. But I don't want that font. That font is not really very good. So let's highlight that. I could have set the font to start with. Ale and Wenches. There we go. Much more appropriate. 108 points, and it's regular. Now let's move to the Move tool, top left-hand side. That's centered there. We'll just move it up there a little bit. Now what we've got here is a very simple word, whiskey, on a layer of its own. Now you think, how can I curve that? Well, not easily, but there is a way. Now one of those ways is to convert that to a curve. You have the word whiskey. You can see there it's highlighted, it's selected, shall we say. Now, there's the thing. Let's go to, there's convert to curves, which is 1, 2, 3, the 4th one up, just there. Convert to curves, you can see that. And just tapped and let it go. Now there's all the words. W-H-I-S-K-E-Y, whiskey. Now they're all, now remember that this is Affinity Photo, but these are curves, which means they're also, shall we say, they can be used as SVG file components because they're curves. Now what can we do with these? There's not a lot you can do with that at the moment, except what we need to do is put something that we can use as a frame or a template. Now let's just not highlight that. Go back to there, the Move tool, and what I want to put in here is, let me find it on the left hand side, the rectangle tool. Now I want an ellipse. You can see the ellipse tool highlighted there. Now I want to draw an ellipse. That looks pretty good. And you can see the top curve of the ellipse there. So let's move the ellipse up. Now it's just below the Y of the whiskey. Now we want that right there on the lower line so that the S, remember whiskey is centered and our ellipse is centered. And I want whiskey to appear as it's curving around there. Now, how can we do this? Let's go down to the W and select the W in there, and you can see that just the W is selected. Now let's move that down a little bit so it's sitting on the top of the ellipse. There we go. Now tilt it a little bit. W, and it's possibly just a little bit over the ellipse. Oops. Now that's dropping in there. Have I got snapping on? Possibly. Snapping. Enable snapping. Let's turn snapping off. I don't want snapping on because this is too... There we go. Now select the H. Now be careful you don't touch one of the dots because that will actually change the shape. WH I H down onto there, the S, slight curve on the S. It's pretty much on the line already because that's where we set the ellipse. Now we've got K coming around there, and then we need the K to go down on the curve. The E, bring it down to the curve and rotate it slightly. The same with the Y, bring it down to the curve and rotate it slightly. But we want the Y just below there. Now that doesn't look too bad. You can see the hanging part of the Y goes below the line. Now let's have a look at that curve, at that ellipse. What I want to do with the ellipse is actually change it to a curve. Convert to curves. Good. Now that's a curve. Now how do we set the outside of that curve so it's a line? We've got to go to the pen tool. We've got to go to, you can see we've got pen tool there, a pen or node. I don't want to actually do anything with the nodes at the moment. Go back to the colour. Now there's the outline, and you can see that the pen tool is set to a pen mode. We set it to edit mode, and I'm on, you see, because I've selected the curve, the vector part of this curve. Now it's 0.2 at the moment, which is a very, very thin line, and it's black. Let's make that something slightly different. Come on, up you come. So we can really see it. Let's set it to 4. Now you can see the line of the ellipse there. Go back to the fill, which is a kind of a grey at the moment. But if you set it to no fill, go back to the curve. Let's just go back to move. And you can see that whiskey is on a fairly black line there. Now that's fairly straightforward. But what if we don't, excuse me, what if we don't want the line? You've got black there. Set the line to 0. No change. And there's the line gone. Go back to it, set it to there. You can see that's black. Okay, that's what we want. And we've got that there. But you don't want the line at this stage, you just want the ellipse. Now that won't show up if you deselect it, you see. It's only when it's selected it shows up. Just touch anywhere on the screen and it deselects it. There's whiskey curved around an ellipse. Now I'm leaving the ellipse there because you might want to come back to that later, you see. And that's done with all of those letters as individual curves. Okay, there's nothing there that we need to do. We can just leave those as they are. Go back to your pen mode, make sure you select pen mode, edit mode, move tool, and you can see that we've got whiskey. Now that's method 1 of converting text and putting it on a curve. Method 2, let's just select the top curve there so we don't do it again. And we'll put in another ellipse. This time I'll put the ellipse here. I'll move it. Oops. What I want to do here is turn snapping back on. What happened to snapping? Snapping, enable snapping. There we go. And that's where we've got that. Now, with snapping on, we want to put text on a curve. Now that's fairly easily done. Let's go to artistic text. You can see the line down through the middle of it there. Let's just check that that's actually the move tool. There we go. You saw that line down the middle. That was telling me it was slightly off center. There we go. Now there's your center line and your horizontal line, but just touch the edge of that circle. I just touched the edge of the circle. You can see that in about the 8 o'clock position, 7 or 8 o'clock, 7:30 position on a clock face. You can see the line flicking on and off there. Now, what I want to put in here, we've still got Arial 108 point. Let's go for Ale and Wenches again. 108 point. Try it with capitals again. WHISKEY. And you can see that it's gone right up there to that red triangle. Now let's move the red triangle around. That puts the lettering on the outside of the curve. Move your red triangle down, move your green triangle up. There's whiskey, and you can see that that little line came up and it puts it just about on the center of the circle. Shape path text, that's highlighted, and the word whiskey is on the outside of it. Now let's see what happens when we go to the move tool and just select outside the curve. There's the word whiskey. Let's move that one right up the top. Get that one there, move it right up the top. I may have made that a bit too large. That curve there, you can see, belongs to that whiskey word there. There's the word whiskey at the top. Now what I want to do is put one more go in here. Ale and Wenches 108, W-H-I-S-K-E, E-Y, whiskey. Move it back to centre. Now I'm going to show you another method of doing this. We've got whiskey selected. Now what we've got there is the word whiskey selected. Ignore the ones up the top. We've got whiskey on a slight curve around an ellipse, and we've got whiskey on a full curve where the ellipse has been converted to a text curve, so it's text on a curve. That one can be fiddly, but it's really worth it because you can not only put it on circles, ellipses, you can put it on triangles, anything you like. So let's look at whiskey. This is our third method. It is absolutely selected, nothing's changed. Now we're going to do this with a live filter. Now let me just turn off the layers and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth option down, which is the filter, and it looks like a little funnel there, live filter. Now let's go down and select A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. There's Liquify. That one there. And why is that saying that it needs to be a pixel mask? Because I forgot one thing. Go down to layers, to filters, and Liquify is still there, but we're going to add a live filter, which is, see, just below all filters, it says as a live filter. We're not going to modify the text. We're going to add the filter on top of it. And you can see there it's turned on. Now, when we find Liquify, LM, there's Liquify, it will be a live filter, and we won't have that problem. You can see the circle came up there. This is one of the reasons why I probably should have moved the word whiskey up a little bit. But never mind, we've got it there now, and it's probably just as well to put it there. Now I've made, you can see on the left-hand side, I'm dragging up and down to alter the size of that circle. I don't need a very big circle to start with, probably about 260 will do to start with. Now on the left-hand side, you'll see the freeze tool, second from the bottom. So we're going to freeze a whole row of pixels just above the word whiskey. So select the freeze tool. You can see the blue bar beside it, selected it. Now carefully, with our small circle of 260 pixels, could probably make it smaller, but there you go. What we do is just draw, oops, I didn't start that off too well, did I? W-H-I-S-K-E-Y. There we go. Put a little bit more there, it doesn't matter. So now we've got that line across there. That's our bumper bar, if you like. What I'll do is use 2 fingers to move the whole thing up so we can see it. And of course, I've left a little dot in there because the move tool is still selected. But it doesn't matter because you can fiddle with that if you like. It won't make any difference to what we're going to do, because the next thing we're going to do is select the push forward tool, which is 1, 2, 3 down from the top on the left-hand side. Push forward. Now, the thing with this is it doesn't only push forward, it pushes back too. So you can see our circle there. Let's leave the circle about that size because I'm going to push each individual letter. Let's start with the S. Paste the pen there and just... You can see it's pushed the bottom of the S up. But let's go along to the end, just under the W. W-H-I. I've probably got the circle too small. Let's go a little bit bigger, 908. K-E-Y. H-W-H-I-S-K-E-Y. You can see it pulls the bottom of the letters or pushes them without affecting the top half of the letter. W-H-S. You can see the S is being squished up. K is being squished up a little bit. The EY being drawn down. So there you go. Now that's whiskey with a horizontal top, and I really should use a different font for that. Whiskey with a fixed top and the bottom is curving. Now the interesting thing is, if you want to do the same to the top of the letters, put a freeze line underneath the letters and no freeze line on top, and you can push it around all you like. Now down the bottom here in the context toolbar you've got done. So click on done and there it is. Now I can show you that this is, you can see it's a live adjustment because it's got that little white box and the hourglass there. Let's turn it off and see what happens. There's whiskey back as it was. Whiskey as it is now. Whiskey as it was, whiskey as it is. So you can leave it on whichever you like. Now that's the third method of adjusting the shape of letters. Not so much on a curve, but individual letters. And you can do with the whole lettering, the whole word, if you use a big enough tool in the first place. Well, really, that's all there is to it. So here we are with the word whiskey, just typed across the screen. Now we're going to use a Liquify live filter for this. Let's go back to the move tool. So we've got our bottom bar. Put the menu up and you can see you've got document, commands, photos, selections and Liquify. Now we're not going to use the one up the top. What we're going to do is select that. Select filters. Now we're going to add a live filter. This changes the behavior of everything slightly. A live filter is not actually being applied directly to the word whiskey. So it doesn't matter that it's not a pixel layer. Let's go find LM. There's Liquify. You can see right at the end of the word whiskey, cross in the column, there's Liquify. Now, it's behaving and it shows up in Liquify. See the top menu bar there? You've got Liquify, but there's a little dot in it telling you that it's now a live filter. Now what we've got to do is freeze the top of the word whiskey. And for this we use that option there. Freeze tool. Second from the bottom. Let's make that by, you can see I'm scrolling up and down there and it's making that. Oops, back up, back up, back up. I just want to, we've got a red thing across there, just ignore that because it won't matter. With my really steady hand, I'm just drawing a red line across there because I want to freeze that. Now I want to use that tool, the push forward tool. Now, interestingly enough, we want the push forward tool a bit larger. Now the push forward tool, you can see it's pushing the W up, but it's also, you can use it to drag the W, H, I, S, K, E, Y, and you can see the top of the letters stays in the same place. Probably use a different font for this, one that's not quite, but you can see the gauze meshwork behind there. So if you really want to get picky, there's W way down there. Now, because I'm also drawing the H down, let's move that down so that's really small. You can see that's only drawing the H down. Pushed up a little bit of the H of the whiskey. Draw the left bar of the whiskey down. Draw the K down a little bit. Draw the E down a little bit. The Y. Now you can fiddle around with that to your heart's content, but a better font may be the go. But if you want what are obviously hand-drawn letters now, done like that, that's how you do it. Click on Done down in the context toolbar, and there it is. You're back to square one. There's your live filter. Now let me show you what happens if you select it or deselect it. At the moment it's selected. At the moment it's deselected. So the filter turns off. You've got whiskey back there. You can turn on whiskey and you can see what you've done to it. It's not too far out of line from what it was. And different fonts will have different effects. So you can have some fun with that one. And that's all there is to it. That's your third method of adjusting text and curving it and stretching it and shaping it. It's not the same as Photoshop, which is really for desktop stuff for people in schools who really want to do something really quickly. With this one, you've got a real lot of control, but if you're doing something simple, it's just as quick. Okay, enjoy.